to begin. The Association of Marketing Service Providers is pleased to present today's webinar program, Stop the Drain of UAA and Return to Sender. Today, you will learn how to determine and attack the true root causes of return mail. You will learn how to calculate the real cost of undeliverable as addressed, otherwise known as UAA, and return to sender mail. You will learn available solutions to reduce return mail, and most importantly, you will learn how to communicate to your clients the importance of address quality and establishing processes to improve return mail rates. My name is Tyler Keeney, MSP's Director of Member Satisfaction, and I will be your moderator for today's session. Please note that today's call is being recorded and all participant lines will be muted during this broadcast. You may receive technical assistance by sending an email to michelle@amsp.org, and we will respond promptly. There is also a chat feature built into the webinar for questions or requests for technical assistance. We have highly qualified staff ready to help you get connected. Today's presentation will last no more than 60 minutes and includes time for questions. You may ask questions at any time throughout the webinar service using the webinar chat system in the dialog box, which should be to the right of your webinar screen. If you can't locate the chat box, once again, email michelle@amsp.org and we'll help you locate it. You may ask questions at any time using this feature, but please be aware that they will not be answered until the end of the presentation. And now, it is my pleasure to introduce today's presenter. Joining us today is Christine Erna of Pitney Bowes Management Services in the Enterprise Postal Consulting Division. Christine has more than 20 years of experience in direct mail marketing, design, analysis, and training, including 18 years with the United States Postal Service as a mail-piece design analyst and educator. A sought-after postal requirement consultant and accomplished and well-known public speaker, Christine presents educational seminars to clients, prospects, and partners on a wide range of topics. She maintains certifications as a mail-piece design professional, address quality specialist, and IMB certified specialist, and she also serves on our postal committee of AMSP. Without any further delay, I'll turn the webinar over to Christine.
Well, thank you very much, Tyler, and good afternoon, everybody. And I am pleased to be here this afternoon speaking to you about return mail and UAA, which all of us in this industry have dealt with for a long time. And today's agenda, we're going to talk about the industry return mail statistics, determine and attack the root cause of returned and undeliverable as addressed mail, what solutions are available for you out there to assist your clients with, and looking forward into the industry and how we can help solve some of these challenges around return mail and undeliverable as addressed mail. So the industry problem. I remember being in National Postal Forum back in 2000, 2007, 2008 when they had a huge address quality symposium, and they brought to light, the real statistics around return mail, undeliverable as addressed mail, and the Postmaster General at the time gave the industry a challenge to reduce undeliverable as addressed and return to sender mail by 50% in 2010. We did not meet that goal. As a matter of fact, the return mail has actually increased even though the volume has decreased. And the costs associated with return to sender and undeliverable as addressed mail are still there, draining all of our clients and our pockets, and more importantly, the cost to the Postal Service. And we as industry professionals, as well as users of the mail, should be doing more to make sure that we can help reduce those costs on behalf of the Postal Service, on behalf of our customers, and adding value to the services that we provide our customers. So the mail volume in 2011 at 168 billion mail pieces. In 2012, 160 billion mail pieces. The UAA volume at 7.02 in 2011, 6.7 billion in 2012, and the costs actually went and increased in 2012. Postage, 2% required to cover the cost of return mail. And you think about, what it would do for us and our clients if we had that 2% back in our pockets instead of paying the Postal Service that amount of money just for them to return mail that we sent out. The bigger impact is to the overall industry with a $20 billion plus cost and impact to companies and organizations in having to manage undeliverable as addressed and returned mail. The top reasons for UAA is 75% of them are move-related, and 12.5% of those are address-related, poor address quality. And what can we do as an industry and information to your clients? Implementing a comprehensive address quality strategy, using all applicable addressing products and services, and tracking your mail channels ROI. And that's really important to understand the impact of what you're sending out and whether or not you're getting the value back in what you've invested in sending that mail out. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. The return mail challenges. So Tyler introduced me, and I am a senior consultant with Pitney Bowes, and I deal with customers and their return mail and undeliverable as addressed challenges all the time in our consulting practice. And a lot of people just don't know what to do with it. You go into an organization and you literally see, Postal Service buckets and trays just full of return mail. And it's an impact to their operations in having to spend manual labor to deal with that undeliverable and returned mail. It's a huge cost to our customers and to the industry. And the bottom line is it really does impact the cash flow within their organizations. I had done a study recently for a utility company, and the value of the documents that they were getting back were, millions of dollars on an annual basis. And when they're not collecting those millions of dollars because those mail pieces weren't delivered, it's a huge impact into their cash flow. And it's pervasive. Every mailer generates undeliverable mail. High-volume mailers obviously are generating a higher volume. Processes and systems are fragmented or non-existent. A lot of times people just don't know where to start. And I was recently, a couple of weeks ago, in another city where their tax department had to send out these notices. And they literally received over 20,000 pieces back, and these were just piled up outside of the tax department. And they're just spending manual labor to deal with it until it gets too much, and then they end up just throwing them away. And there is an urgency based upon Postal Service compliance requirements around move update and meeting CAS certification requirements. And there's certainly an impact with industry regulations. And I'm dealing with customers in financial services, healthcare, and state and government regulatory requirements about their challenges in their own industry regulations of when they can change an address based upon the information that may come from move update and or CAS certification. So it's important for you in being able to provide value of the services you're providing your customers as members of the Association of Marketing Service Professionals to understand what those specific industry regulations are and being able to guide your customers into solutions that will serve to accomplish the goal of reducing the return mail, but being sensitive to those regulations that they have to comply with. And again, the economic impact on these customers is extraordinary. Back to that slide previously, over $20 billion to, the mailing industry within the U.S. So what the customers are challenged with: reducing operational costs associated with wasted mail, manual and decentralized processes that are difficult to measure, low correction rate of bad addresses. I was actually visiting another customer where they have 10 different operators sitting in a cubicle. They each have their tray of mail, and they're looking up addresses on the USPS website. Very labor intensive and very, very costly. And being able to manage and update their databases when they find a corrected address or an updated address. And large investment in technology and IT resources to be able to create that process for when you do get those updated addresses, how are we getting them back into the master database? And as always, we have the risk of those Postal Inspection Service return mail audits. And we've certainly heard the stories within the industry of the fines that are levied against organizations when they don't have the process and proof around specifically their move update processes. And you can see on the illustrations here in the grids the percentages of mail on the top graph here. What are customers doing with return mail? You get 45% of them that the undeliverable mail is returned to the individual department. Only 28% of people are actually measuring the volume of the return mail that they get. Some people scan and image it. Some update the address. Some update the source of record. Only 1% of people actually remail the documents, and 8% of those are levying a secure destruction process. And the current issues with the current processes are it's decentralized. If you have undeliverable as addressed and return mail, going back to specific departments, working in silos, you're not looking at a enterprise-wide global view of an organization and the challenge that they have with their return mail. Reactivate, low correction rate, not measured, and again, manual process, very, very labor intensive. Excuse me. So again, more customer challenges is there's no metrics. How do you know the impact of return mail if you're not calculating the volume, the frequency, the percentages, and more importantly, the value of those documents that are coming back? The cost impact, and that there's no centralized procedures or processes for managing those. And a lot of it is due to lack of knowledge and understanding, and this is where we as Association of Marketing Service Provider members can help our customers. And I'll get into a little bit more detail around the education process that we can provide them, those customers. So if we can help them reduce operational costs associated with wasted mail, manual and decentralized processes that are difficult to measure, help them put a process in place where they can centralize, count the volume that comes back, identify a dollar value with what that is costing them, and provide them solutions of getting a higher correction rate of those bad addresses. We have the means, the knowledge, the software to be able to do that for them. And then making sure that you finish the process, or finish the 360 degrees by making sure that they have a process to update the data that we've updated, corrected, into the database, so that when they generate a mailing list, that they're generating that with the new address that's been found. It doesn't take large investments in technology and IT resources, but they need to be part of the process so that they can contribute to services and software that they may have available to help the process. There's a slide that I use frequently in my presentations about, I am your customer. How quickly can you find me before you suppress me? You can discontinue my service. You don't collect from me. You move me to collections. I miss an important legal notice. I don't respond to your offer. I call you and complain. I am lost forever. And this is so critical for our customers to understand the big umbrella around address quality, that the data that they have in being able to communicate to their customers is probably one of the more valuable assets in their organization. If they're selling particular products or services and need to reach those customers, the only way you're going to do it is with good address quality. And again, our challenge is, just to recap, around reducing those operational costs, manual and decentralized processes. We want to be able to centralize a process for them, uplift the low correction rate of bad addresses, and managing that 360-degree cycle and being able to update the database of record when we find an address, and certainly reduce the investments in technology and IT resources. And at the end of the day, making sure that they're not putting themselves at risk with the Postal Inspection Service for return mail audits and fines associated with those. So now we'll talk about some of the root causes of return mail. And it goes across initial occurrence, recurring instances, and the impact. Invalid input. Over 40% of address errors start at the data entry level. There are many different avenues in which physical data entry can happen, whether it's from a reply card that comes in and there's a manual operation for someone excuse me, keying that information into a database. It could be a web form from a website that someone's keying in information. But the sheer manual act of someone keying in information is where over 40% of the errors in address quality are made. There's a typo, missing information, and non-USPS information. I was literally at an appointment last week where this was happening with a state agency. And when they didn't know the address of what a particular location needed to be, they were just putting X's in the address field, not understanding that that's going to generate an invalid address. So when you do get address changes, renamed and renumbered streets, that never happens around here, reconstruction, and certainly disasters have a huge impact. And there have been too many over the last few years to count, but that really does have an impact in the ability to maintain address quality when, you know, you have a house that just is unfortunately obliterated that becomes a non-delivery address. And as we know, people move. Over 40% of America moves every year, which contributes to a huge amount of returned mail. Processing errors, whether it's with a machine and or human. Software in the sheer process of going through CAS and NCOA processing, errors do happen. Did not use follow-up on data warnings from available tools. And a lot of time, back to that previous slide about just lack of knowledge. You know, if you have a person working in your data processing department that has followed the same procedures for a number of years, you know, maybe they don't know that there's some enhanced tools available within your software or within the Postal Service that can help enhance address quality. And reoccurring instances, delayed and failed communications. A lot of times if you're not updating those records and you identify it as a return mail piece and nothing's done with it, you know, the next month you're just generating the same bad mail piece. And it's a huge cost in the physically managing returned mail. Again, there's just been numerous customers I've visited where they just have volumes and volumes and volumes of return mail. And it's a huge cost in postage and production. And the industry average that we use to work with our customers, and this certainly fluctuates, but $3 is the number that we use to portray the cost associated with return mail. And that takes care of data processing, print production, inserting, postage, mailing it, and managing the physical return when it comes back. And the impact, again, is in delayed payments. If you're in a first-class environment sending out statements and invoices, again, huge impact in receiving those payments. Lost opportunities if it's a marketing mailing. And it certainly impacts the return on investment of the mailing if you're not taking into consideration the poor address quality, the undeliverable and returned mail. And again, the most important part is the lost connection with that customer. And the impact, again, is delayed and failed communications, fail to detect if your customers don't have a process in place and or you're not providing feedback to your customers about the health and quality of their mailing files, and being able to recommend that they don't mail those invalid addresses. that they're more than likely going to create undeliverable as addressed mail, which in a standard environment would be thrown away, in a first-class environment would be returned. And being able to fail to apply the data to future mailings. If you're processing NCOA services on a customer file, being able to give them that feedback file and say, here's your updated change of addresses that you need to put back into your database, so that when they generate that mailing list the next time, they have the updated information to mail to the correct location. And fail to investigate and follow up. If you're processing a file for a customer and you get a CAS score of 98%, let's focus on that 2%. What's wrong with those addresses? How can we get them corrected? And then being able to feed that information back to the customers so that they can, again, mail to a good quality address. And delays in getting and applying updates. I'm sure all of your various software vendors are providing you with updated information, whether it's your CAS certification and or NCOA updates. Critical to make sure that you install those as soon as possible so that you've got the latest information to be able to provide your customers. So here's a scenario of 100,000 addresses and what happens to those addresses in 90 days. 4.5% of them will move, that's 4,500. 2% of them will likely be UAA due to a foreign or no forwarding moves. Of course, we know that there are a lot of people that move and don't file a change of address with the post office. And that generates a lot of return mail. So of 100,000 addresses, 6,500 of those may never reach their intended audience. And industry average statistics are that a mailing list will deteriorate in 90 days 3%. So in communicating that information to your clients around address quality initiatives and why they need to have a comprehensive address quality process, here's just some basic statistics that you can use and share with them. So what causes UAA mail? As I mentioned, moves. 75% of all UAA mail comes from moves. 2.6% is first-class mail. Includes failures to update files and failure to use the NCOA NICSE information. And I spend a lot of time diving deep in the analysis and comparing month to month. We process files for customers and do comparisons for them. But diving deep into the analysis of information that you get back from your CAS reports and your NCOA reports, and being able to share that information with your clients is critical. It's going to help them improve the overall health of their address database. Vacant addresses, 6% of UAA mail. There's a little checkbox in a lot of the software that you just have to include when you're doing your delivery point validation to make sure that it's checking for vacant addresses. And it's even more important why you should be updating your CAS and NCOA software as soon as that release comes out, because it's going to have that updated information of what vacant addresses have come off the list, but more importantly, what new addresses have been put on the list. Missing secondary addresses, 5% of all UAA mail. And I use this statistic, or this example, I want to say, in giving presentations. You're a letter carrier, in the bottom floor of a high-rise building, and it's addressed to Sally Jones, no apartment number, or it's addressed to the XYZ company with no suite number. If they have, 500 deliveries in that particular building, it's virtually impossible to deliver that piece of mail without that secondary address indicator information on there. And a piece of advice to share to your customers is if they have a data entry process from a web form and or they're taking calls through a call center, asking the person on the other end of the phone, do you have an apartment or suite number to go along with that address? Is a quick and simple way to get that information. And invalid address information, in reviewing address files I receive from customers, it's just amazing to me. Someone sends in a file for processing, and a 10,000 record database, they've got 500 records that have no address information whatsoever, or missing cities, missing states, and just being able to educate customers around the basic level of address quality will certainly improve that. 24 of every 100 mail pieces contain an address error. 5 of 100 mail pieces are undeliverable as addressed. 3.4% of first class and 6.4% of standard class mail. And unless you're using an endorsement on standard class mail, that mail is being recycled and thrown away. And that's, again, attributable cost to the Postal Service in having to recycle that mail. What can we do? Implementation. The software that we as service providers all have and have available to us, CAS, DPV, LAX and LAX-Link, SweetLink, NCOA, making sure that we're using those consistently and always on customer files. And as I mentioned before, it's one thing to process the records through all of these various software tools, but being able to feed that information back to your customer about the overall health of their address file is a critical step. And making sure that, again, when you're processing through NCOA, that you're actually sending the changes back to your customers so that they can update that database. The level 2 process is third-party data sources and tools. Data beyond the time frame of USPS database tools. We know the database, the Postal Service's NCOA database has 2 levels. They maintain 18 months of records for NCOA as well as 48 months. Data not reported and available to the U.S. Postal Service. Used to augment level 1 and used when results in a positive ROI. So Pitney Bowes actually works with a service provider as a third-party data source for proprietary change of address. And we'll be getting a little bit more deeper into that towards the end of the presentation. But that proprietary database has sources of information that people change their address outside of the Postal Service. So being able to complement the Postal Service's tools for change of address with a proprietary or third party that can look to those sources can help improve your customer's database and finding where those customers are. The important part is establishing a process used to initiate and track additional activities to confirm or correct information. Establish a benchmark to measure against. If you have that, initial results from your CAS and NCOA processing to start as a baseline, and using those complementary tools to be able to uplift and find, where people have moved that haven't filed the change of address, can show a positive ROI to any investments the client may make. Establish an ongoing maintenance process. We know the requirements are, a move update process within 95 days of mailing, but we know that, the rate of moves, there's a lot of missing opportunities if, they wait the 90 days that they process the file through NCOA to mailing, when it would be helpful to do it just prior to mailing. And as I mentioned before, databases deteriorate 1% a month. So based upon the size of your database, that can be relatively small or relatively significant. So as mail service providers, what can we do to help our customers? The data, as we talked about in the previous slide, all the basic level tools that we already use in a day-to-day data processing environment, mail piece design and production, making sure to facilitate letters and flats. Obviously, letters have a higher volume of return over flats just because of the differentiation of volume between the two mail piece styles. Facilitating communication of delivery information using address change service, using tracking service, working with one client, a very large financial services client that has implemented and instituted IMB tracing as well as ACS service to a level that's pretty phenomenal. When a mail piece is not going to be delivered, their IMB tracing tool can actually watch and track that mail piece back to their return mail center. So when it's not delivered, they have well in advance notice that it wasn't delivered and can start the process to figure out what's wrong with that address or finding that address. But to be able to watch it come back into their return mail center through the IMB tracing tool is pretty phenomenal. And as I mentioned, for your clients that are challenged with volumes and volumes of return mail, it's essential to get a baseline of what's going on within their organizations and being able to offer a value-added service and work with them to facilitate a return mail process and data collection process. Unique mail piece identification certainly comes from the intelligent mail barcode and being able to track that mail for them and provide information around, the impact that they may have within a manual environment for return mail is pretty significant intelligence to have in your mail. Obviously, the IMB tracing does have owner and value and contents with respect to the type of mailing that they have sent out. And the services that we provide also utilize other types of barcodes to be able to capture return mail information from 2D barcodes, whether it's a traditional 2D and or the use of the intelligent mail barcode to use, as well as potentially a QR code. So how do we get started in this improvement process? In our consulting practice, we have a mantra of correct, complete, and current. So again, educating our clients in considering implementing a solution at point of capture, work with your mail preparer to identify records that's not DPV. So once we get those addresses corrected, we want them complete. And doing the analysis based upon the CAS results and NCOA results, why is there a percentage of them that didn't get coded, didn't get updated? Break into the reasons why and take action on those reasons why. And keeping it current by having that pre-mailing NCOA process and post-mailing, whether it's ACS or an ancillary service endorsement, and making sure, again, that you have that tail end of the process buttoned up and making sure that that master database is updated with any updated information that you get. Where to start at point of entry. As I talked about, data entry of names and addresses. If it gets to a point with your clients of just sheer basic address standardization education, hold a little workshop or seminar for them about the basics of address quality and how to build an address in their database, making sure they have the appropriate fields in their forms to capture all the necessary information, and making sure that CAS certification and an NCOA process is done. There are a lot of software tools in the marketplace that can be dovetailed into an entry form on a web or in a database that will do address validation. And many of you have probably seen these if you do any shopping online. Most of the major retailers have an API built in for address validation. I type in my address, and before I can go on to the next screen, it pops up a window and says, this is the address you put in. This is what the U.S. Postal Service validated as the correct address. And then you select either your original entry address or the validated Postal Service address. And very easy to dovetail those into, like I said, a web form and or a data entry module at an organization. As I mentioned, Pitney Bowes offers a enterprise return mail solution, and as marketing service providers, you are all welcome to offer this service if you wanted to as a reseller, and that's certainly something that we can talk offline about if it's of any interest to you. But we actually automate return mail processing, and we automate it and centralize to manage it and reduce wasted costs. being able to reconnect with your customers, updating 60 to 80% of undeliverable addresses, and integrate multiple technologies for capturing return mail, converting physical mail to data, updating addresses, post-processing document management, and ultimately eliminating physical returned mail, which is obviously the most costly. An important part in a return mail and undeliverable as addressed mail strategy is understanding and assessing value of the documents that your clients are sending. And here are some examples of the document type, how we determine the value, the estimated value, and what potential tools can fix those addresses. So if there's invoices, it generates revenue for an organization. And let's say the estimated value is $100. What tools can fix those? Postal pre-mailing, obviously CAS as well as NCOA, and third-party proprietary change of address if that physical piece is returned. Correspondence associated with customer satisfaction, $7 in the call center cost, and pre-mailing postal processing, and that's CAS and NCOA, and note account if it's returned. So if it's returned, you can document it in your customer relationship management system so that if that customer calls in, the call center representative can review that information in the file to say, hey, we tried to mail something to you and it was returned. So then that point, the call center customer representative can ask them for an updated address. So document type being marketing, it generates leads, $100 for every response. There's pre-mailing, postal, CAS, and NCOA as well as third-party data sources to be able to update that information. And regulated notification, and this is very prevalent in certain industry verticals, financial services, healthcare, as well as state and local government, where they're required to send specific notifications. And it's around customer satisfaction, and again, that impacts the call centers at a $7 $7 call center cost. And again, being able to have that intelligence if someone calls in to say the mail piece was returned is pretty valuable. So the return mail integrated technology that Pitney Bowes offers actually scans and captures physical return mail pieces and creates an electronic state of that mail piece. Using OCR technology as well as data entry, we actually capture the address information as well as the yellow sticker information, and we create a database out of that. And then we process that through multiple address hygiene, postal move updates, and as I mentioned, the proprietary change of address. And we create a mailing file with updated address information, and depending upon the customer and the type of mail that they have, there is a physical remail process where we're taking the original return mail piece, re-enveloping it, and remailing that particular mail piece out. And no new addresses there. We store or shred the mail pieces, and we update the information into a database and provide that information back to the client. And there is a reporting module that they can download the reports of the success of the processing as well as the updated address information. And this is a completely customizable solution for our customers depending upon the needs and requirements of the customers. You know, maybe they're scanning in their own locations rather than the physical mail going back to a partner location. As well as I mentioned before about 2D barcodes. We have a lot of customers that are just putting a 2D barcode that shows through a window. So all we have to do is capture that 2D barcode information, and we're able to capture and build a database of the original address information. It's pretty phenomenal technology, and it's helping a whole host of our customers being able to manage their return mail. I'm going to show you a couple of case studies that we had and were successful in helping a financial services company Their objective was to rapidly mitigate the impact of return mail for privacy notices. This is an industry regulation that they have to send out those privacy notices. The problem was that the privacy notices generating returned mail, the SEC requirement to communicate caused repeated return mail, no measurement of return mail, and it was estimated to be 10% of their outbound mail. Internal attempts to resolve were unsuccessful. The results that we provided was an accurate measurement of return mail, and the actual number was 4.2%. We updated 71.1% of bad addresses through a process of CAS, NCOA, and the proprietary change of address. Remailed documents to updated addresses, eliminating the need to regenerate the notices. Reduced the cycle time for updating address information from months to days, and solution implemented within 1 week of finalizing the requirements. That was a very, very successful case study for us. And one similar to an insurer, they delivered transactional documents to customers to increase collections and cash flow. The problem was that their premium bills, renewal offers, cancellation notices, and customer communications returned undeliverable as addressed. Internal resources could take up to 30 days attempting to locate customers with numerous unsuccessful attempts. Internal process was inefficient, extending service issues and delays, and caused cash flow issues to late payments or no payments. The results were a 25-to-1 return on investment, including improved cash flow, which any customer would love, and certainly increased collections. Updated more than 50% of bad addresses, reduced process cycle time, reissued of initial bills to customers within 3 to 5 days versus 1 to 3 months, improved customer service since address updates were occurring in hours and not months, and the solution again was implemented within 1 week of finalizing requirements. So the enterprise return mail solution delivers a huge net savings to organizations. And you can see the iceberg over there where it's just the proverbial tip of the iceberg showing out of the water, but it's a much, much bigger drain on organizations when they really dive deep and uncover the hidden costs associated with return mail. The benefits for customers are reducing volume and expensive return mail process, centralize and automate a manual process, improve cycle time from weeks to days, increase visibility with real-time centralized reporting, improve deliverability by updating 60 to 80% of bad addresses, improve confidence in address updates through strict logic to verify updated addresses, apply intelligence on decisions related to bad addresses, reconnect with customers, updating again 60-80%, and central visibility to the quality of addresses and return mail to make decisions. Again, the goal for customers would certainly be to eliminate the physical return mail, because that is automatically going to reduce the manual costs to their operations internally. Integrate multiple technologies for capturing return mail, converting physical mail to usable data, updating addresses, and numerous post-process options. Again, Reconnect, that's again one of the more important elements, as I mentioned before. A company's assets are their customers, and the ability to communicate to those customers through direct mail and having an address quality strategy to ensure those communications go through is essential. Back to my favorite slide. So if I'm your customer, how quickly can you find me? And I'm not going to repeat myself, but you get the message around the importance of address quality. So now we are going to open it up to questions. And as Tyler had indicated at the beginning of the broadcast, you have a chat feature available. and you can type your messages in there, and I will answer them for you.
That's right, Christine. You are correct. We do have that feature, and obviously we've reached the question and answer segment of the webinar. So please submit your questions now through the webinar system using the chat box, through the dialog box on the webinar screen. I don't see anything. Actually, there is a question, Christine.
Okay.
How do we find a good third-party source for address updates?
That's a very good question, and there are several resources. Certainly, first and foremost, through our own Association of Marketing Service Providers. If you do a search within the website on our various members, there are some third-party data sources that are members through AMSP. Additionally, through the National Direct Marketing Association, you could find a third-party resource, as well as certainly reaching out to me. I can assist you with that as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Now, I noticed that in your presentation, you mentioned the data quantity you speak about is large. What's a practical way to update smaller lists? Let's say 5,000 or less.
Obviously, using the tools that a marketing service provider would have going through CAS, NCOA, address element correction available through the Postal Service, but even through a third-party source, a 5,000 record database would certainly be a sufficient enough quantity to work on.
Okay, this question is related to CAS as well, Christine. How come I get so many back with not deliverable as addressed when they go through CAS?
That's a very good question. There's a lot of different reasons. And if there's some analysis done on your CAS results, it's going to point to why you're getting mail back. And having worked in, letter shops and mailing houses myself, it's pretty industry standard practice that you run CAS certification on a file and you identify those invalid addresses, but more times than not, people are mailing those invalid addresses. And if you're not doing the deeper dive to figure out what's wrong with those addresses and choosing not to mail them when they're identified as invalid, is certainly going to reduce that return mail.
Okay, thank you very much. I had a question. I know you talked about OCR, and I'm not sure if this is related to that, Christine, but someone wants to understand how barcodes are used to reduce the cost of return mail.
Excellent question. So in the document composition, we all know that we're generating an intelligent mail barcode through the CAS certification process, EPV process. You could use the intelligence built into the intelligent mail barcode with a mailer ID and the serial number to be able to use IMV tracing to track back mail that's being returned as one option. The other option is with 2D barcodes. The amount of data that can be built into a 2D barcode and set up in your document composition would allow that return mail to be scanned. You just scan the 2D barcode coming back, and you're going to create a database of all of those returns, which then you could then process through a multitude of address cleansing processes to find where those customers moved to or why the mail piece was returned.
Okay, thank you very much. I think you may have already touched on this, unless you want to elaborate further, Christine. We did get a question. Someone wanted to know, where do I start?
Where do you start? And that's a very good question. I would start with communicating with your customers and ask the question, are you challenged with return mail? And if you are, You have to baseline volume and what they're doing currently in their organizations right now. How are addresses entered into the databases that they're using to mail? If they don't have a address validation process, if they're using data entry, that would be a recommendation for them. Level set their overall address, the health of their address database. You know, offer to do a CAS certification process on their mailing list and dive deep into the results. Look at the codes that come back to find out what's wrong with those records and addresses. And then, you know, plan a strategy to work with your customers around what do we need to do to fix up those invalid addresses? What do we need to do do a validation process at point of entry? What do we need to do in being able to track the volume of return mail coming back in and assessing the volume of the return mail coming in? What are they mailing? Are they invoices? Is it affecting their cash flow? And certainly anybody that, you know, wants a quick snapshot of steps on how do you start, reach out to me and I'll send that to you.
Okay, that'd be terrific. Well, Christine, I don't see any more questions in the queue, so I think it's now time to conclude today's program, Stop the Drain of UAA and Return to Sender. It's always a pleasure working with you, Christine, and we appreciate you taking your time out today to share such great information in such a brief amount of time, but it's really been worthwhile. So we want to thank you very much for your time today.
It was my pleasure, and thank you all for attending. I appreciate it.
If you would like more information on UAA and return mail, you may reach out to AMSP and we'll put you in touch with Christine. At the end of the webinar, you will automatically be directed to an online evaluation. Please take a few moments to answer the survey and give us your feedback on this webinar. Your comments and suggestions are very important to us as they help us to provide you with continued quality educational programming. This concludes today's program, and we thank you for your participation. The webinar will automatically end. Thank you.